Welcome to the Escape Podcast, Monster Month.
This is the Escape Podcast. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Josh.
And today we're going to be talking about In the Mouth of Madness. You picked this one out, Josh.
I did, yes.
I had never really heard of it before. I didn't know anything about it. And it's kind of funny. It's a John Carpenter film.
Right, yeah.
Last night I went to go see the new Halloween movie.
Yeah, how about that?
It was alright. It's somewhere between alright and good. More towards good.
Okay.
There are a couple funky issues with it, like at the beginning, and there's one kind of like a weird twist that happens in the middle.
Okay. Now this is technically a sequel to the first?
Yes, it's a sequel to the first one, maybe the second one, but
it's more or less wiping everything else out.
Yeah, it ignores everything else.
Okay.
It was written by Danny McBride, who many people know from Eastbound and Down.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not too bad. The direction was pretty good for the most part, and the story was pretty decent for the most part. It was kind of weird because it features Jamie Lee Curtis replaying her character, and it also has her daughter and her granddaughter in it.
Wow.
And
okay.
So that's three characters that it seems like they had a hard time picking which one to focus on. Mostly it was bouncing between Jamie Lee Curtis and the actress that played her granddaughter. And it seems like if they had balanced that out a little more, it might have been a little bit better. But, you know, it was good. It was more like the original one than any of the other ones had been.
Okay.
So, I don't know. If you're a fan of the first one, you'll enjoy it. It looks like it did pretty good at the box office. I know every showing that I went to check out yesterday was all sold out until we got up to like the 10 o'clock. Then I was able to get a seat kind of towards the front. Well, we've been doing Halloween stories.
I'm out.
Let's talk about monsters for a second. Like,
very well.
What kind of classical monsters were you afraid of when you were a kid?
Afraid of?
Yeah. Like, which ones do you think are actually the scariest? Ghosts, vampires, werewolves, witches?
I don't know if I had one that specifically scared me more than others. When I was a real little kid, I was afraid of aliens. I think it was because of Fire in the Sky that freaked me out.
So back when I was a kid, and there were certain movies I'd see on TV that would scare the crap out of me now. Or, well, not now, but if I looked at them now, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Two of the ones that popped in my head were Critters, the original Critters movie that I saw on TV one time, and it scared the crap out of me. Because there's this scene where the dad is going down these stairs, like into the basement or into the cellar, and, you know, one of the critters is down there. He thinks it's a cat. Cats are always bad. So, he's going down there, and he's like, "Here, kitty, kitty," and then the critter, like, shoots a venom spike into his neck or something like that. And then there's also the original Troll movie, not Troll 2, with Grandpa Seth.
Sonny Bono?
Right.
Yeah.
The Troll movie, the original one, there was the little girl who goes downstairs. She's, like, chasing her ball, and she goes downstairs, and that's where the troll lives, is down in the basement of this apartment building.
Yeah.
And that always creeped me out.
Yeah, no, I found apartment buildings to be kind of creepy. When Brittany and I first got married, we lived in an apartment, and it's just, there is something very strange about them. I don't know. It's just, it's weird. It's creepy.
Like what? The hallway where all the doors are, or what?
Just the actual basement of because that's where our laundry room was in our building. There's just something weird about it.
Okay. Well, all right. In the Mouth of Madness stars Sam Neill. I had never seen it before. What year did it come out?
Well, most things say 94, although I did see some things that said 95, so I'm just going to go with 94.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a John Carpenter film. It has Sam Neill and Julie Carmen. I cannot pronounce the actor who played Sutter Kane.
Try. Do your best.
Jürgen Prochnow.
Where's he from?
Well, Brango, he was born in Berlin, Germany in 1941.
Okay.
It has Charlton Heston and a little part by David Warner.
David Warner is the British guy that's interviewing him?
Yes. I mean,
he was in Star Trek, right?
3 times. He was in Star Trek 5 and 6 as separate characters. He was in the TNG season 6
as a Cardassian,
episode,
right?
As a Cardassian, from Chain of Command Part 1 and 2. We also have Bernie Cassie, who played the guy that hired him, Robbie. He was in Star Trek DS9.
Oh, okay. That's the guy that was like the head doctor. He was
also in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures.
What I recognize both of them from the most is the first one you said. What's his name?
Bernie Casey?
No, the British guy.
Oh, David Warner.
David Warner, yes, that's right. I recognize him from a bunch of stuff, but every time I see him, I always think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. Well, it's been a long time since I've seen Omen.
He was in the Omen.
And the other guy that you're saying, I always think of him as the guy that owned the building in Gremlins 2.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, and then John Glover, who was the head guy of the mental institution, he was also in DS9. So we have quite a few Star Trek.
Oh, that's the guy I'm talking about, John Glover.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about his.
Who was the other one you said?
Bernie Casey. He was
Which
the
one was
guy.
he?
He was Robbie, the guy he was at the diner with, and the guy comes through the axe, tries to.
Yeah, I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. What other things has he been in?
He was the teacher in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the one that they had to, get their passing grade from. That's the biggest thing I recognize him from.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Okay.
Do you want more?
Yeah, let's go through trivia.
Okay. Most of Sutter Kane's quotes are actually taken from several H.P. Lovecraft short stories, with some adaptations to fit them better into the film. This is the third film in what John Carpenter has called the Apocalypse Trilogy, the first being The Thing from 1982, and the second, The Prince of Darkness from 1987. The car keys that Julia Carmen swallows when Sam Neill is trying to escape the town were actually made of pasta.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The film Sam Neill is watching somewhat near the end was Robot Monster from 1953, which is apparently John Carpenter's favorite monster movie as a kid.
Oh my gosh, I recognized it. It's a Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah, it's like the gorilla suit with a scuba diving helmet or something on.
Yeah, they just put whatever they could find together.
The building used for the mental institution at the beginning of the film was a water filtration plant in Toronto. Filming is no longer allowed since the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Pickman, which was the name of the hotel and the old woman who owned it, is actually a Lovecraft reference from one of his books. Toward the beginning, when the hand breaks the glass of Sam Neill's cell, a piece of glass cut him in the neck. The Mrs. Pickman creature was shot as a miniature. Originally it was a man in a prosthetic suit, but John Carpenter didn't find it convincing enough. This is Hayden Christensen's first feature film. The dozens of monsters featured toward the end of the film were actually a combination of men in suits, animatronics, and full-sized wall of creatures. It took over 30 people to operate it. And the last one is, after Sutter Kane tells Sam Neill, "My favorite color is blue," whenever an actor has a close-up, their eyes are blue, proving Sutter Kane's power. Now, I looked for this, and I couldn't tell. I know you pointed out the thing about the guy's shirt.
I did know. Well,
supposedly it was the eyes.
They cut back to where he's on the bus and everything's blue, and he starts freaking out.
Yeah.
But then he's wearing a blue shirt. I know Sam Neill's eyes are blue. Yeah, I just caught blue after that. Yeah. And I was probably just paying attention because he said that.
Yeah.
All right, Josh, what's this movie about?
Well, it's about a Stephen King-esque horror writer who has a loyal following of crazies or people that tend to go crazy, and he apparently goes missing, and they send someone out to try to find him and to get their last book. I'm not very good at explaining.
Sam Neill is a insurance investigator.
Yeah,
freelance.
You explain him.
And he goes around just finding insurance fraud all over the place, and he gets hired by the publishing company to see if Sutter Kane, if he's gone missing, to find out if he died. They want their property, basically.
Right, they got half of their book from the what was his, not his publicist, but his
agent.
There we go, that's the word I wanted.
Yeah,
they got half of the book. Yeah,
so they wanted the rest, and they were trying to track him down.
Right.
But as Sam Neill goes along, he thinks that maybe this is just a publicity stunt.
Right.
And I don't know how to explain the rest of it, really. It's just craziness.
Yeah, so let's start from the beginning, I guess. We get some pretty rockin' soundtrack as we watch books being printed.
Yeah, I commented that I thought it sounded like the sequel to Roadhouse.
Yeah, it was very unusual, and I thought there was a lot of times where the music was just very strange. Obviously, there's the one joke they do where they playing it's what was the song I said? I thought it was "We've Only Just Begun" in the mental institution. I mean, that was kind of to be funny.
Yeah.
But even the scene right after he encounters Sutter Kane, there was just really strange musical choices, and I don't know, I didn't think they fit and worked well.
The music was a little odd. John Carpenter does the soundtracks to his own movies, so I thought the soundtrack was okay.
Okay.
But the rock music was a little weird. It sounded like a Metallica song or something
like that. Yeah. This is a very strange film. It's kind of all over the place. So I actually saw this at least 3 times as a kid, and I don't remember. Obviously, I was just a kid. I was more looking at the monsters and stuff, but I didn't realize how ridiculous and very just all over the place this movie is. It's very
It reminded me of a few things. I wrote down Lovecraft.
I wrote that down too.
Yeah, because once they started to look a little bit like Cthulhu, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it had that like dark tone, these ancient gods that live just outside of our dimension that are trying to break back in. It had kind of that theme to it. So very much it was like that. It also reminded me of a video game I played for GameCube.
Okay.
I
played that game.
Called Eternal Darkness.
Okay.
That game is based a lot on like Lovecraft stuff too. So in the game, like you're this character that inherits a mansion, and you find out that her uncle was killed under mysterious circumstances, and turns out all these forces of evil have been plaguing mankind from ancient times.
Okay.
And as you play the game, you start to go insane. You have a sanity meter.
Oh my goodness, that's
and
funny.
Crazy stuff happens to you as the sanity meter gets lower.
Okay.
So at first it's little things like maybe you're walking down a hallway and a statue that you walk by, like the bust, it'll turn its head as you walk by, and you're like, oh, that's cool. And eventually it gets crazier and crazier to where like you have to like chase your head around a hallway and put it back on before you can go to the next room.
Okay.
And it even messes with the player because every now and then like you'll see a bunch of bars on the side of the screen. It says volume, and it'll start going down. You're like, what the heck? And you'll start looking for your remote.
That's funny.
You'll see the mute button come up. And every now and then, it'll actually give you a blue screen with a bunch of like computer jargon, like if like your GameCube just busted.
Oh wow, that's funny.
And you're like, and then it goes right back. So
That's
it messes
funny.
with you as
Yeah.
much as it messes with the character.
That's interesting. Does it feel like
also-
a Twilight Zone episode a little bit, like expanded into a movie? Like I don't know. I feel like there was a Twilight Zone episode about something like this where someone was writing something and it came to life.
That's a theme I've seen in like science fiction
Yeah.
over and over again. Like people are actually writing their own story, writing their life, or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it is exactly. I feel like there was something like that I've seen in Twilight Zone, but if not, it felt like
There
a Twilight
probably is a
Zone.
Twilight Zone episode like
Okay.
that. At the beginning, it kind of reminded me of like one of those episodes of Star Trek where like it kind of thrusts you into the middle of the story,
Yeah.
and then it kind of backtracks to explain how you got up to that point
Yeah.
before you can finish the story.
Right.
It also reminded me a little bit of Hellraiser, which I think is partially based on Lovecraft ideas.
See, I'm not up on that.
That was one I was kind of thinking about
that
doing.
was one I was afraid of the most.
I think if you can handle this one, you could probably handle that one. That one's a little more messed up. It also reminded me of... Let's see, I wrote it down. I was wondering if maybe John Carpenter was kind of just like making his own version of a Stephen King thing, and they kept bringing up Stephen King.
Well, I was reading that he is friends with Stephen King, so it could have been a little joke. Because I remember, so like I said, I had seen this movie 3 times as a kid, and then it's probably been about 10 years ago now, I could remember certain things about it, and I was explaining it to somebody, and I was saying like basically made their Stephen King for the movie, and that's what I remember the most. And it was funny, I didn't remember the fact that they referenced like, oh, he outsells Stephen King. We got to find this guy.
Almost like he was like poking him, like
just
friendly.
a little joke.
Yeah. It also reminded me of, we covered this one on last year's Monster Month, House.
Yeah.
A little bit. The writer that was having difficulties.
Okay.
He was being haunted by his past, and he had to go through all that crazy stuff to get over it. And Jacob's Ladder.
Okay, I've seen that once. I barely remembered it.
That one's a little bit of like a
It's got
psychological...
Tim Robbins?
Yeah, Tim
Okay.
Robbins, he's a Vietnam vet, and he starts to suspect that something's happening to all the people that he was in.
Okay.
I've only seen it like maybe twice.
Okay.
But it's a lot of like, what's really going on here type of thing, and then
Okay.
it gets to a really weird point.
I'll have to rewatch it at some point. All right, so yeah, like we said, we have David Warner, who I always kind of associate him as in these kind of weird, messed up movies. And I don't know if I'm totally right. I just feel like most of the ones I've seen, he's in like in those really out there kind of movies, like at least some of in the 70s and 80s.
Like I said, I think of him from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I also think of
that's
him...
the one I remember him from like, as a kid.
He was in like he was in a crappy fantasy movie called Quest for the Delta Knights, I believe,
Okay.
which I've seen, but I don't remember at all. That was also featured on Mystery Science Theater. But he wasn't in this very much. He was only in like 2 scenes. I was surprised to see Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston was only in 2 scenes too.
Yeah, I was surprised too. So this came out, like I said, 94, and he was also in True Lies that year. And it's kind of the same thing where he had probably 2 scenes. He probably came in one day. I think he was like, his career obviously was dwindling, or I'm not saying like because he was not good, but just probably was wanting to phased out a little bit, or maybe he wasn't into those type of movies. But yeah, he did like 2 scenes. He probably filmed it all in one day.
I know, he stepped more into like a political thing, and he was involved with the NRA. Sam Neill, like it's hard for me not to see him as the dinosaur guy from Jurassic Park. Although I know he did do some crazy stuff. Like he did this. He also did Event Horizon, which I know is insane.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it.
I've seen it once. Again, I feel like that was a really out there one, and I don't think I know it's out in space and stuff, but I don't think it's so much about aliens. I think it was almost like
about like opening a dimension to hell,
something like that. Yeah, which seems weird for like space and stuff. Like, doesn't seem like it.
It's weird to me because I think of him as the Jurassic Park guy, and also he was almost James Bond.
Oh, really?
Yep. There's actually test footage of him as Bond.
Oh,
it came down between him and Pierce Brosnan.
Okay, what'd you think?
I wouldn't have mind seeing him as Bond.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had the live action version of The Jungle Book. It was where Mowgli was older and Sam Neill was in it. Obviously, I mostly know him from Jurassic Park. Other than that, I don't know. I'm sure there's stuff I've seen him in, but I just can't think of anything significant right now.
He was in Thor Ragnarok, briefly.
He was?
Yep.
Oh, I don't remember him.
He was in the background somewhere as some little character.
Okay, so... All right.
So, yeah, this movie is pretty crazy. It starts off with Sam Neill being locked up in a mental institution.
Right.
By the Gremlins 2 guy.
Yeah. And I thought it was funny that... So David Warner, I guess he didn't believe he was crazy, so he was trying to get his side of the story or something.
That's what it seemed like.
I was kind of surprised, though, still, he went into the cell alone.
It's kind of funny because David Warner was kind of doing to him what he did to other people, where he didn't necessarily believe him, like he was testing him out to see if he was faking it.
Right. But we learn, so we don't know exactly why he's in there. I guess you're just thinking because he told somebody these crazy stories, but I cut to the end, I guess he hacked some guy up.
Maybe.
Yeah.
They show that to us.
Yeah, so what I'm really confused about in this movie is, was he a real person? Was he something that Sutter Kane just invented, like wrote? Like, I don't understand.
Well, we'll get to that. Let's go through the movie and then we can talk about what we think happened.
No. Okay.
No.
Fine.
Okay. Fine.
Lead.
So anyway, the story backtracks. It's doing flashback scenes to explain how he got into the situation. He's the investigator, and he gets hired to go track down this dude. The craziness starts off when they're in the diner, and the dude with the axe comes, and
right, and he's got like his eyes are splitting in two.
Yeah, he's got basically 4 eyes.
Right,
I don't know how
2 eyes, 2. What's that? The iris?
Sure.
He's got
double
like
irises.
2 iris per eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he looks pretty crazy and out there, and then he's about to axe. What's his name in this movie? John Trent.
Yeah.
He's about to ask John Trent a question when the cops bust in and shoot him up.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks him, do you read Sutter
Kane
books?
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets hired to go on the Sutter Kane investigation.
Right. It was like, for him, it was obviously foreshadowing because him and Robbie were just talking about...
Yeah.
Because he was basically, Robbie wants to hire him as one of his own. He's like, no, I want to be freelance. He's like, okay, well, do me one more job. Because Robbie, I guess, insures the book publisher, right? I think that's how it all added up. He's like, do me one more job. That's when, obviously, he busts in the Axeman, who ends up being, what'd you say, his agent? Sutter Kane's agent?
Yeah, he was Sutter Kane's agent.
Right. So... but you see as they're talking, as they're not realizing that he's coming up on the window, he had said like, oh, the Sutter Kane thing, and he's like, it's like he's kind of heard of him, but doesn't really know or care. In fact, he thinks it's pretty much nonsense.
Mm-hmm. And that was a cool scene. I like, because like they keep it inside the diner, but you can see through the window this guy just coming across the street with the axe, and people are freaking out.
Right. Yeah. So I wonder, was he the Axeman, and was he just like, because he was, I'm assuming, coming off a bookstore.
Sure.
Was he just like killing people in there? Like, I wonder.
I don't know.
This movie is very hard to tell what is really happening, especially as it goes along further and further. Mm-hmm. I don't know what for sure really happened and what, I don't know. They just keep it's really strange stuff.
Mm-hmm. So, as he's investigating, he goes to a bookstore and he sees all the Sutter Kane novels. He picks them all up.
Right.
Just so he can get an idea of who the guy is and where he might be if he's missing.
Well, she suggested it. She was the book editor, I think. Mm-hmm. Is that what her task was? They said, like, she read them all. So she was very up on it. And she basically said, like, yeah, have you ever read his book? So, and you can see he's kind of embarrassed in the store to pick him up.
And he's in the bookstore, and there's that crazy guy in there that's staring at him. Mm-hmm. Says he can see.
He says, yeah, he sees you, which, yeah, I mean, you're just kind of assuming that it's Sutter Kane he's referencing, that Sutter Kane sees you.
And what I noticed in that scene were all the Sutter Kane books were $5.99. That's a pretty good price for a book.
Yeah.
Even back then.
Yeah, well.
$6 for a book. So there's a collection. There's like 4 or 5 of them, right?
I think I want to say they said that In the Mouth of Madness, which is the book, the movies, centers around.
The movie In the Mouth of Madness is about a guy who's investigating the author who wrote this series of books. The newest one that he's working on is called In the Mouth of Madness.
And I believe they said it was the 6th book.
And eventually he realizes when he's at his apartment and he's reading these things that the artwork on the covers kind of matches up. So he rips them all off and then cuts them up, and he sees that it's a map.
New Hampshire, yeah.
Yeah, it gives him an idea, which is also kind of funny because like it's the main New Hampshire area, and that's supposed to be where Stephen King is from.
Right, yeah, I think that was another reference to him. I thought it was strange, there was like a dream within a dream within a dream. They
did that a lot.
Yeah, they kept showing this scene where he's walking by this alley, and there's like these posters of the previous Sutter Kane
and the cop
books.
is just beating on homeless people.
And then, he looks down the alley and there's a cop beating up on some guy. Well, they show it's a spray can. They show a spray can by the guy's foot.
So you assume like he was tagging the building?
Well, they do. They show it because remember at first it says like CA or something, and then like the next time he goes in that vision, it says can see, like more of it was written.
Yeah.
So yeah, the guy was graffitiing the building, but frankly, who cares? It was this nasty, slummy alley. Like, who gives a crap what's written on that? But anyway.
Yeah, and the cop says, "You want somebody?" or something like that.
Which was also funny because he was already walking away. I mean, he kind of looked back, but it's not like he even looked like he was trying to intervene or anything.
He's dressed in this fancy suit and everything. Well, not super fancy, but he's dressed nice, like a businessman.
Yeah.
And he's got something that he just bought, maybe the books, whatever.
He's holding his coat in his hand.
Yeah, it seems like he had a bag of something too. But why is he walking down this crappy alley?
Yeah, that didn't make sense either.
At this point, the other movie that it kind of reminded me of was a previous John Carpenter movie.
Okay.
They Live.
Okay,
anyway, because like people kept saying they can see.
Yeah.
He sees you and stuff. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Plus, he has that style that carries over from movie to movie.
Okay, obviously we've both seen The Thing, which they say is the first part of his Apocalypse trilogy or whatever. Have you seen The Prince of Darkness?
No, I don't know anything about that.
Okay. I was just wondering, basically, if you could recognize any kind of recurring theme in all three.
Like maybe they're connected somehow?
Maybe. I was just wondering if it's like a loose connection or
what. I'm wondering if maybe just like each story can lead up to the end of the world, because I know with The Thing, at least in the original story, and his movie was based really close on that original story.
Okay.
Was the scientists realized they can't let anything escape at all. No animal, no person can leave this area, otherwise the world is going to end, because whatever this thing is that came from outer space, it's going to take over, because it mimics everything and it affects everything.
Right.
Which is kind of how they described what was going on in this movie. People have been infected by the story.
Yeah. So I thought it was cool when they were traveling. They were trying to find this town, which I was reading. They said that Hob is a old word for the devil.
Okay.
H-O-B-B. Mm-hmm. And they are talking about how this town doesn't appear on any map. And there's a part where she's driving, and there's all this crazy stuff. You keep seeing this kid, this like maybe teenage kid, like biking by, and then like later you see the same kid, but he looks like old, I guess.
Yeah, it's a person in old age makeup.
It's the same guy. And he says something at one point like, I can't escape, or he won't let me out, or something like that.
Like he's doomed to repeat the same thing over and over again.
And I'll get back, remind me, and I'll try to see if I can.
Well, I want to bring up something else about that car ride.
Okay, very well.
That I just started laughing because it made no sense. Okay. So they're driving, they're trying to find this Hobbs End place, which nobody has ever heard of, but it's the name of the previous book, Horror at Hobbs End, or something like that.
Right, it has the title in it.
And So it's him and the woman that's supposed to go with him as he's investigating what happened to Sutter Kane. And she's sleeping in the passenger seat, and he gets like this childish grin on his face. Reaches over ever so quietly to open up the glove compartment, which he has basically like a clown horn in. Like one of those things you squeeze it and it has
it kind of reminded me when I was a kid I had something like that on my bike.
Yeah, so you squeeze it and it's like honk honk, you know? And he woke her up like that, and he thought it was hilarious. It was just the weirdest scene.
It was very out of place because he seemed like a no-nonsense kind of guy prior to that point. And then, she's like hitting him with a bag of chips, and I guess it was supposed to kind of build up some kind of camaraderie or something between them, even if not romantic relationship, just something. It felt very out of place, yeah.
It was so strange. I was like, why is he carrying that in his glove compartment?
Right, yeah.
Although that might be further evidence of maybe nothing is real in this movie.
Yeah, so there's a part, though, where she's finally driving. It's, like, dark, and you keep seeing this thing with the road. The dashes are almost like highlighter, glowing. And there's a part where she looks down, and, like, they disappear, and, like, she's got her head out the window as she's driving, and then, like, a lightning flash, you see she's out in the sky. And the next thing you know, like, they land on the boarded, bridge. But like it looks like you're in a spaceship. It reminded me of the scene where Travis Walton is being drugged down the alien corridors, and you see like the lights flashing real quick
from Fire in the Sky.
From Fire in the Sky, and eventually they come through, and you see it's one of those covered bridges that you would see in small towns, and then they come out and there's
like in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, and it made me think like it was almost like they were crossing the gap, the entering this portal through this town that I guess he created.
That didn't exist.
Yeah, that didn't truly exist, except for, I guess, that... Or, I don't know if it's supposed to be that he wrote the town into existence, or is it that it's just an other dimensional, like an in-between, like almost like in Twin Peaks, the what do they call it? There's the red room, or the white room, and the black room, or something like that, and then there's the lounge, they called it, which was like this in-between world that connected the two other worlds. And I almost wonder if, because then in his writing room, there's a door, like an old castle door that's like slimy and it's warping, and these monsters or whatever are in there trying to escape. It almost made me wonder if like he was in this in-between world between our world, like the bridge world that connected our world, this world of monsters. And
one of the things I just kind of thought of, there were a few scenes where like it would repeat over and over again.
Yeah,
it did that maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the movie. It kind of reminded me of when I don't know about you, but when I'm reading, sometimes I'll start reading the same line over and over again.
Yeah,
and it's really annoying.
Yeah,
but eventually, like, okay, I got to get down to this next line.
Yeah.
And I put my finger there so I can make sure that I don't start reading the same line again.
Yeah.
Kind of remind me of that in a way, or maybe somebody has writer's block and they keep starting over.
Could be.
So he gets to the town, and they get to this little hotel, and she knows what the hotel is like already. It has that weird, like, greenhouse area out front, and she describes how people saw weird tentacled monsters in it, and I don't know what she's talking about at first, and then he's like, oh, right, this is, like, from the book.
Right, she said, oh, there's a painting there, and oh, that board's loose there.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, he had read the books. Granted, he didn't know them as well as she did. They're talking about the church being out a certain window and whatever, and...
The black church with the golden onions on top.
Yeah, is that what he said? I was like, is that what people call them? I never heard that. Is that a real thing people call them?
I don't know. It's a descriptive way to say it, I guess.
Okay.
It's the church with, like, it has, like, bulbs on the top. Like,
yeah.
Almost like an Arabian style.
It reminds me of, like, Russian buildings.
That works, too.
So, yeah, she knows the books better. She's describing things, and he says, like, this isn't any of the books. I read the books. But she had read... Did we talk about this? That she had read... half of the newest book.
Yeah, she was the only one.
Yes.
She was the only one that had that half of the book.
The agent brought half of the book back. So the agent was trying to ultimately stop Trent from getting the rest of the book. He knew that he was going to bring the rest of the book, so he was trying to stop the madness, essentially. I don't understand then why did he even bring the first part of the book if he knew that this book was going to be bad.
Maybe he handed it in before he realized.
I guess, maybe.
Because with Sam Neill, he finished the books before he started to go crazy.
Okay.
Or whatever started happening to him.
Right, so in the town, they're talking about...
Plus, maybe everybody isn't making their own decisions. Maybe somebody's writing it down for them.
Yeah, see, I feel like this movie is kind of sloppy in a way. I almost feel like this really should have been, it's like, I feel like almost like he took all these different concepts that probably should have been their own movie, and he stuffed them all in to one movie.
I think it's meant to be a little ambiguous.
Yeah, it just feels a little all over the place. Just, I don't know, nothing's quite...
I think that's just the way that these types of stories are, where like people are going insane and you're not supposed to know what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
A lot of the movies just seem like they all do this almost where they can just do whatever they want and then say, well, what was real and what wasn't. And that gives them the freedom just to make scene after scene. Because
she seemed like him, like where she was freaked out by stuff, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she had this very like just kind of
hypnotic in a trance.
Yes. And then she's like trying to kiss him, and it's just like, you know, they didn't really have that kind of relationship at all.
And they didn't really explain it, but she tries it again later, and she says because that's what he's writing her to do.
Yeah, and like, I guess kind of makes sense, but it's just a really weird...
Something I kind of like about that is it almost seems kind of like a commentary, especially in movies. There always has to be a love interest. And he's like, why? Why are you coming after me like this? Because that's what essentially she says that's what the audience wants. It's good for the story.
She said he's writing me, he wants me to kiss you. It's good for...
And that drives me nuts, like in superhero movies all the time, like they always have to have a girlfriend on the side. Well, you know, it's never really a part of the story, but they have to have it in there.
Yeah. So throughout the story, he's convinced that this is all publicity stunt, that everyone is in on it, that this town... It's all special effects. He's seeing some crazy stuff, but he said he just tries to pass it off as they're trying to scare me or, you know, get me, you know, whatever, so that I'll go back.
It's a theory. It's a good theory he comes up with. Like, all of this is a giant publicity stunt. They would have had to have spent a ton of money on it just to fool this one guy, though.
Yeah. And you think, though, but, okay, if this one guy it's not like he's a celebrity, you know, he's an insurance investigator. If he comes back and claims, I went to this town that doesn't exist and all this crazy stuff, is that really going to sell in the real world? Like, you know, it'd have to be someone that is a very public figure.
Well, he thinks that it'll bring tourism to Hobbs End, too.
I didn't get that impression.
That the publication company and the writer and the town are all in league with each other to create, like, a tourism.
See, I did not pick that up then. Because he was asleep when she was driving and entered the town. So it's not like he would even be able to report back, well, this is how you get to the town. Everyone would have to stumble upon it. Well, everybody would look it
up. Oh, Hobbs End, all this crazy stuff happened.
But they said they couldn't find nothing on it, except for the fact that
he thought that.
Right. Anyway, what I'm getting at is I just felt, well, again, I didn't see what you saw then, or I didn't notice that.
I think he said it.
I just thought he said that he, you know, so he can go back and say all this crazy stuff happened in the books. It doesn't seem like the books needed any more help at that point. Everyone was going crazy waiting for this. They talked about how the movie was already in production.
They mentioned that a couple times.
Which didn't make sense, too, because they didn't even have the whole book. How could they be making a movie based on a book when they didn't even have the completed book?
I have a feeling that it's actually a little more realistic than it seems. I bet, because look at Jurassic Park 2. They wanted to make Jurassic Park 2, so they started working on it, and they're like, get the book out.
Yeah, I guess, but in this context, it seems like they would want to go exactly, this guy is penning these, you know, books that are selling like hotcakes. They'd want the
a lot of Stephen King's movies to get turned into books, too. I bet there may have been one or two of the movies that came out based on his books. So like, okay, we're going to turn this one into a movie before they even know what it is.
And, well, anyway, the reason I was bringing this all up, so he's convinced it's all a plot. A fake thing, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a part where he's driving the car.
I was kind of trying to put myself in his position there too. Like, what kind of explanation would I come up with if I saw this crazy stuff? Like, that might be one of the most grounded things you can think of. Like, it's some production.
Yeah. And I was thinking, that's the part where there's a big mob in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And he gets out of the car to go into the bar to talk to that one guy who
turned out to be
Vigo, the Carpathian from Ghostbusters 2, which very good eye. Once you said it, I was like, oh wow, yeah. Like I looked him up, and yep, sure enough, that's
something about him seemed familiar. And at first, I was trying to figure out, like,
I was just noticing the accent. I was like, that's a strange accent.
Well, the accent kind of tipped me off into it too. But the first time or two that they showed him, I'm trying to figure out: is he wearing makeup? Are those prosthetics on his face? 'Cause something looks a little off.
Yeah, he has a unique face, and I looked up. He's also was in Die Hard.
Yeah.
Which I almost seemed like it's like now that you clued me in, I was like, I think I
was stressing though, like something about his face I
Yeah.
just kept looking at, and then it hit me. Oh, that looks like the dude from the painting in Ghostbusters too.
Yeah.
Speaking of paintings,
Oh, yes.
that painting in the hotel kept changing over and over and
Correct.
over and over. And
That reminds me of Night Gallery.
what happened to Night Gallery?
Well,
Was that a Stephen King?
no, Night Gallery was, I think it was Rod Sterling, right? But it was an anthology show.
Okay.
It's the only one I know about, and it's about where... What, do you want me to explain the whole episode?
Sure.
Okay. It's about this rich guy who's going to be dying soon, and he's going to leave all his fortune to his nephew or something. His grandson, I don't know. And he goes to the mansion. It was like, it's going to happen soon. And there's like only one there is his manservant, essentially. And there's this one painting of the entire mansion and the grounds. And you can see in the painting that there's even the family cemetery in the back yard, essentially, on the property. And throughout the episode, I guess more and more as he would pass this giant painting, he would notice like things that weren't there before. For instance, a freshly dug grave. And then at some point later, all this weird stuff's happening. He would see it again, and now there's a tombstone there that he's like, I don't remember seeing this. And next thing you know, he sees it again. It's his name on the tombstone. So
does the episode end with him in there?
Well, what happens is he's very convinced that something is going to kill him in the house, and he's like all like freaked out, and he's like moving around in the dark, and he ends up tripping and falling down the stairs and dying. And what you find out what's happening is that the manservant was going to inherit everything if something happened to the grandson. So the manservant apparently was changing the painting periodically to freak him out, and I think he ultimately tripped him. Somehow he rigged it to have him fall down the stairs.
Okay.
So then he could get everything. So there was really nothing quite so supernatural about that one, but yeah.
That reminds me of like House on Haunted Hill.
Okay.
With old one with Vincent Price. Anyway, yeah, so that painting keeps changing. There, the one scene we both kind of laughed at. He comes down and he's looking at the painting real hard, and whatever the painting was before, it was a man and a woman the whole time, and they were looking in different directions.
Yeah, one point they're facing the camera.
Yeah, now they're facing the viewer.
Yeah.
And like the woman's eyes are bugging out in different directions, and the
it
guy
looks like
has
their
a goofy
hands
face.
are almost like tentacled or like super long.
And he's
bony.
looking at it, just looks all weird. And the old lady that runs the hotel comes over.
Yeah.
And he's asking her about the painting. He's like, did you make this painting? And she says, no, I wish. It's a lovely one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, it certainly is. And he was like serious, though, when he said that. Like he was just trying to butter her up.
I didn't take it as he was trying to butter her up, just like, yeah, it's like Yoda, when Yoda goes, oh, good food. Yeah. And he's like, yeah. So,
yeah.
Like, just like, great. So I thought it was funny. There's the one part where Vigo, I guess it's his son, that was in the church, and he has this whole mob of guys, and they all got like shotguns. They drive it to this church, and all these, I think they're Dobermans, right?
Yeah.
Come out, and
they were Dobermans, yes.
So yes, Dobermans, and all of them there's like probably 30 people. Only one shot is fired, then everyone just like runs away, and these dogs are overtaking people, and I was like, why is no one firing? Like, they had time. As the dogs were running toward them, there was more than enough time to start shooting, and it just seemed like I think Vigo was the one guy who fired a shot, and then everyone else running away, and I just thought it was kind of funny that they all had guns and did nothing with it.
Yeah. Well, those dogs were scary, though. There were like 9 of them.
Yeah, but there was probably 30 people all armed.
Yeah.
Anyway, I definitely, even before reading the trivia, I already wrote down, like, I was definitely getting that Lovecraft theme, and I don't even know as much about him. I defer to you on that. I bet you know a lot more about it.
I've never really read any of the stuff. I kind of understand.
I was reading about just him and some of his stuff. It's pretty out there, it seems like, the stuff he was coming up with.
Because it was like the late 1800s or so when he was writing.
That I'm not entirely sure of.
It was, or maybe he was in the 30s, but I don't know. Yeah, it was like everything, a lot of the stuff he wrote were about like extra dimensional gods.
Yeah,
that were trying
it wasn't
to infiltrate.
really aliens per se. Well, I guess anything really not of this world that could be alien. Typically, when we think of aliens, we think of like from outer space.
I think he called them like the Great Old Ones.
Yes.
Like they were around when the world was created,
right?
And they've just been slumbering this whole time.
So we were talking about the painting within the movie here, and it changes each time. Now, the last time he looks at it, and the people are now like lying on the ground, and they're like,
it's like a tentacle monster,
tree people.
Yeah.
And they showed that in the painting, there's the church in the background, which is in the actual town. You can see behind it what it looked like it to me, like long-legged, armed creature, which kind of reminds me of the final thing, the movie The Mist, that thing that was walking. It kind of looked like that, which even there made me think of Cthulhu. We never saw anything quite that large, but it looked like there was something in the background of the church in the painting, but foggy, like. It was just kind of interesting, like a Mist, which is funny because wasn't The Mist written by Stephen King?
Yes.
Just kind of interesting to me. I don't know if that means anything, but
yeah, it definitely had that Lovecraftian feel to it. You could tell like that's what he was going for. That church was pretty creepy. They called it the Black Church, and the inside of it was weird.
Yeah, it didn't really look like a church.
It looked more like an ancient temple of some sort.
Yeah.
And then they had the special room where it turns out that Sutter Kane was hiding out and basically trying to finish his book. And when Sam Neill starts talking to him, he basically alludes to it could work this way, that so many people by this point have read his stories and believed in his stories that they're becoming reality. And now whatever he writes is reality. Or whatever these things are from the other place have been influencing them this whole time, and that's how they're getting into our reality is through his books. And the more people that read it, the more the influence they have, and they become more powerful.
Yeah, it's strange. At one point he says something to the effect of, they gave him these ideas. So I'm also almost thinking it was like he was just a writer, maybe not a very successful one, and somehow he found out about this.
Somehow he tapped into it.
Somehow, like maybe he accidentally just drove into this, this waiting room, the in-between room or something, and that's where he started, picking up on this stuff. They didn't quite explain how they're communicating because he was like holding them back too.
Like
it wasn't like he was like friends with them, or
maybe
like
he had to save them until the end of the book, and then they would all come over. Basically, it said. He was saying it would be the end of the world, or humankind would be extinct. And at a certain point, the movie keeps evolving. And once you start to figure out what's going on, it becomes something else. And then from that point, you think, oh, okay, this is kind of like a cycle where like the books are becoming reality. And because people are reading it and believing it, it's making the reality stronger.
Right. They didn't do the whole thing where it was just monsters were going to... I mean, the monsters were chasing him at the end, like they were invading our world, because he even said, I can't hold them back. But yet the people were becoming the monsters, so there really almost didn't seem to be a need for these creatures to come into our world to do whatever they're going to do. We basically became them.
Well, then it starts to come up with the idea that the whole that Sam Neill is actually part of the story and never existed.
Yeah, and that's what confused me. So I'm thinking like, okay, so he wrote him into existence. That's the part that really confused me the most was, so you're saying Sam Neill doing all these other investigation jobs, like the guy at the beginning with the fur coats and his wife, and how he burnt down his own warehouse. Like is that why he was independent? Like, is he or freelance? Like that was just very strange to me.
And it goes on to, even when you get to the end of the movie.
Yeah. Whoever the actor was that they got to play his character for the book adaptation to the movie, they were just using clips from the actual movie.
Yeah, they were...
I almost thought they should have had a different guy playing him.
Well, I don't know. He goes to a movie theater where they're playing In the Mouth of Madness, the movie adaptation of the book that this guy's been writing, which is also the name of the movie that we're watching. So he goes into the theater.
Which is also the name of the book that you're currently living in right now.
Well, that's... I'm going to get into that in a second. So he sits down at the theater all by himself because people have just disappeared. All throughout the movie, in the background on the television and in the radio, you can hear people talking about something's going on. There's some kind of epidemic, something. They keep alluding to it.
Right.
Something nationwide. Something.
Well, no, worldwide, because they talked about how many languages his
worldwide.
books, have been...
So... at the end of the movie, people disappear. He's by himself, basically. You can hear that, like, a lot of people have disappeared. If anybody's left, they should...
stay locked in,
yeah.
And yeah.
So it becomes almost like a alien
epidemic.
invasion, disaster type movie.
Which is
something.
funny when he comes out of the institution after, like, so yeah, he's sitting in. It's after he tells his whole story to David Warner.
Mm-hmm.
David Warner leaves, and he's in his cell, and I think he's asleep. He wakes up. You hear all this yelling and screaming. You're seeing shadows on the wall of monsters attacking people. Then silence, and then all of a sudden his door gets like kind of pulled open. He eventually goes out into
There's
the room.
Blood everywhere, but there's no body parts or evidence of people.
There's blood only on the doors, which you'd think there would have been blood just everywhere. It's kind of placed
so
nicely.
yeah, and the door's all messed up. There's
Yeah.
blood on it, and you don't see people or body parts or anything.
Right.
You just see pages everywhere.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny. That reminded me of the opening of 28 Days Later when the main character wakes up out of his a coma or whatever, and he's walking around like basically the hospital's deserted. He goes into town, it's deserted. I almost wonder if that scene at all was even just influenced that beginning part of that
And
movie.
then he finally gets to the theater, where he sees the movie version of the book is playing. He sits down to watch it, and it's showing you clips from the movie you're watching.
Right. So yeah,
clips
so
from you're seeing In the Mouth of Madness, the movie, inside of In the Mouth of Madness, the movie.
right. Yeah, I was saying I thought that almost it might have been better if they would have. It was cheaper, of course, because you already shot the stuff. Just show it in the theater. I thought it would have been better if you would have saw it, like, oh, here's some actor portraying his part for that movie, because then it just begs the question of how did they get him or someone that looked just like him to film the scenes for this movie? You know what I mean?
I think it was him.
You think that like
Yeah.
Sutter Kane was just essentially like, it's
it's weird. One thing that I kept thinking about that was kind of funny is it almost breaks the fourth wall in a way, because you're watching this movie called In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be about this story.
I've-
They kind of pull the thing like very subtly. They don't focus on it, where like it makes you think that, oh, you're actually a character in this movie as you're watching the movie.
This would have been a great movie to have a secret scene at the very end of the credits where you see someone set down the book and be like, well, that was crazy, and like basically say that everything that happened was a book. You know, him reading these books.
You know what would have been funny?
No.
Had they gotten Stephen King to like be reading it,
Oh, that would've
and
been
close the
kinda
book
cool.
and throw it away and say it's trash or something.
That would have been
like
kind of
that.
cool, yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy all over the place movie. Why did you suggest it?
Well, when you sat down, we went to that one place. I remember you sat down and you're like writing out this whole list of movies. And I guess you must have asked me, like, did I have any movies? And I was thinking, like, well, I remember watching In the Mouth of Madness as a kid. So that's it. I mean, I wanted to speak real quick on the tentacles under the door. Do you remember the part where...
Yeah. Where she's like on the other side of the door.
Yeah, and I don't know if they looked like something was behind or in front of her, I should say, because you see like something you can kind of barely see it through like, not stained glass.
Or maybe it was her.
Maybe. But he looks down and you see these tentacles under the door. That reminded me of the dog transformation scene from The Thing. Mm-hmm. The way those tentacles were just going all crazy.
I'm betting he used
probably used the same people, yeah.
The special effects in this movie some of them were just okay, some of them were really good.
Yeah.
It was cool to see all the different types of creatures, even though you only saw them for bits and flashes.
No, yeah.
There was
Some
a lot
of
of
them
work.
looked a lot better than others.
There's a lot of work that went into like the makeup and the creature design and all that stuff, which is almost sad in a way because you only got to see everything in brief flashes throughout the movie.
Well, this movie came out in 94. This was probably like one of the last movies because obviously Jurassic Park came out in 93, which kind of married the two pretty good. But it seemed like after that, everything started moving more and more and more away from puppets, animatronics, and people in suits and going to CGI. This is probably one of the last big movies. I'm not saying the last, but one of the last movies to just I shouldn't say exclusively, but heavily utilize.
Certainly by 2000, CG was in most things at that point.
So she swallowed his keys. She's clearly off in La La Land, and he thinks he sees tentacles coming out of her, but yet she punches him, and then it's pretty funny.
He punches
her right back, but he puts her in the car,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, she's clearly one of them now or something. And there's a part where he keeps trying to leave, and then it takes him back to that same spot, and he tries to leave, comes right back to that same spot. By the third or fourth time, he decides to ram them, which was pretty much what I would have done the first time. But he dodges everybody. Well, they don't show him really hit people, but when he sees her in the crowd, he swerves for her.
I wanted him to plow right through everybody. I was
exactly.
I was cheering. I wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
And
but
then
what's funny is he sees her and he swerves.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, why would you swerve for her at this point? Like, because it caused them to get to a wreck.
It reminded me of Army of Darkness. There's a scene towards the end where all the Deadites are coming in at Bruce Campbell in the castle there. You know, the one they go back into medieval times.
Yeah, I've seen it at least once.
And he has his car back in medieval times, and he rigs up this giant blade or some blades on the front of his car, and he's just driving around chopping up all the zombies.
Okay.
And then his girlfriend from earlier, who became one of them, is standing in front of him, but she looks normal.
Okay.
And he, swerves the car to avoid hitting her.
Yeah.
It was a trick, but it reminded me of that.
Okay. So there was a scene I felt like it was just one of those scenes just to do it. So he has her in the car. He's out like on the road and he sees that kid that's looking like a crazed old witch. It kind of reminded me of Billy Crystal from Princess Bride. Have fun storming the castle. That guy. But he's using a payphone and he stops because he sees this kid. And he's like all thinking it's really unusual. And I'm thinking like, okay, after all you've seen, this is not unusual. He literally just made a phone call and then he got on his bike and left. But then that's the scene where they have her come out and she's all contorted like the Exorcist, upside down.
Yeah, that was
walking.
creepy.
Yeah, but I really felt like that scene was just done just so they could have her come out like that. Like, because there was no reason for him to stop there and look at this kid as if he was seeing something really outrageous stuff, you know what I mean? It was just like poor...
Well, I think he recognized the kid as a thing, and he's trying to figure out how did that kid get there.
No, it was the kid from the bike. That might have been where he saw him, but like I'm saying, after all the crazy stuff he just saw from the town, why would he stop over that? Like,
I don't know.
It just, you know what I mean? It just makes no sense. Like, just go. Don't care what you see, just go. Mm-hmm. And I felt it was just like a way to... like, how can we want to have this scene where we have contortionists do their thing. But
her head was all turned around and on backwards. Yeah. It was weird looking.
Yeah, I was reading how the person who did that, it was just a mask, which once they really started moving, you could tell there was no expression in her.
Yeah.
There was a mask of her face, and the person couldn't see, so they were going off
As soon as her head peeked around the door, like, I knew something weird was going on. I wasn't expecting that exactly.
Right. So here's my main thing. The movie starts with him already going to the insane asylum, so everything that's happened to him through the whole movie has done and happened.
Did you notice that there's the scene towards the end where he's running away from...
the monsters.
Yeah, and it's like this long hallway, and it looks like a dark version of the insane asylum. Like, the insane asylum is this long white hallway. Now he's running down a long dark hallway.
Okay, see, I did not...
They look very similar.
It kind of reminded me of, and you won't know this, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, where the basilisk, I don't know if I'm saying it right, there was this long, like, I guess kind of hallway, and there was like some water on the floor. It kind of reminded me of that.
Harry Potter, that's one where the guy who never shaves makes pottery?
Yes.
Okay.
Good one. Anyway, so basically he's already experienced all this stuff by the time he's first put into the insane asylum. Mm-hmm. What I was finding funny about it is he wanted to get out. Like, he was, like struggling, like, no, I'm not insane, I'm not crazy. But he already knows all this stuff is happening. I'm kind of thinking, at this point, if he knows everyone's going to start going nuts and turning into monsters, you'd almost, from the start, want to stay in there. And I thought it was weird all of a sudden, like, was it the next day when David Warner came to see him, then he decides, okay, I'm good here, I'm safe here, I want to stay. I thought that was, you'd think he would be cool of going there from the get-go, because he knew that was a safer place to be.
Well, it wasn't.
Yes and no. I mean, he never was harmed. I mean, basically,
he was the main character of the story, though.
I guess, but I'm saying...
And I mean that in a...
I know what you mean, because it's like literally... It just didn't... It was weird to me that he changed his heart so quickly about this is a safe place.
You get time to think about it. If some people are coming to lock you away, you're going to resist.
I would just think, okay, so he comes back, he's talking to Charlton Heston, the publisher, like, don't publish the book. Charlton Heston says, well, what are you talking about? You handed it to me, was it 6 weeks ago or 6 months ago? Or
he said something about last April, too.
Okay, yeah. You handed it to me, X amount of time ago, and it's coming out in, a couple days or whatever.
And they were already working on the movie.
But he has no memory of this. Mm-hmm. So I it's
Then it starts to make you wonder, is he really crazy again? But then it shows monsters some more.
It's so, yeah, it's like I said, it's all over the place,
Yeah.
and it's hard to really know what's, which way's up and down, I guess you could, I don't know if that helps it or hurts it, because I don't know, I always try to figure out things logically in these movies, and maybe I just need to let it go and just kind of roll with it, but it was very strange.
Ready for final thoughts?
Sure.
All right. Well, for me, I didn't know what I was getting into. And yeah, I tried to stay ahead of the movie. It always kind of bugs me, like even in Star Trek, when they start you off like that, where something crazy is happening, and then they have to take you back.
Okay.
To get to back, show you how that crazy point was gotten to. Because the whole time I'm trying to like stay ahead of it and think about, okay, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. So these kinds of stories already kind of get on my nerves a little bit, and then like the fact that it's just insanity, so we can do whatever we want.
Yeah,
none of it has to make any sense or mean anything, and maybe a lot of it does, and I just have to rewatch it a few times.
Okay.
I've heard good things about this movie.
Oh, really?
Like, well, basically, I heard it mentioned like about a week ago. I was watching a video about a different movie. And they mentioned In the Mouth of Madness, they said it was good and something.
Did they show anything of it?
They didn't say anything about it.
Okay.
Just that it was good and that they were going to talk about it later. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I'm going to be watching that one soon. I like Sam Neill. The acting was good. The special effects were decent to good throughout the movie.
For 94, yeah.
The story wasn't the most crazy story I've ever seen. And I like that it makes you think about it afterwards. What did I just watch?
Mm-hmm.
So was I supposed to be part of the story?
Yeah.
Was
basically we just seeing a book in movie form, essentially.
Right. Was the story being written, and that's how it was being written, and that's why things are happening like that? Like, were we seeing the actual reality, like the written part become reality?
Yeah.
Was reality influencing the writing? Like a different reality?
Yeah.
There's all these different questions.
Sure.
Or was he really crazy? And it makes you think about it. All in all, it's okay. I give it probably... I'm going to go with C-.
Okay. Yeah, I almost verbatim, you took the words out of my mouth. There is a lot of interesting ideas, but this movie feels like it's got so much going on, it can't really keep it all straight. It just feels like it should have been 3 or so different movies that he had ideas for, and a lot of them are pretty interesting ideas, I think. It's very sloppy. But I do appreciate the use of practical effects. It reminds me of the theme of, if enough people believe something, is it true?
Yeah.
And, like there's a lot of things going on now where people post something online, enough people believe it, it's true.
Yeah, like if you're scrolling on Facebook and you see like an image of somebody famous, let's say just like, I don't know who, Bozo the Clown, but then there's a quote next to it, how do you know that was said by him? You're like, you just get the idea of, oh, he said that, and then you'll start repeating it, and so it's true without even
there's a lot
knowing.
of things we believe that who knows how much of it is actually accurate. And it's a little different, but I don't know, I kind of felt like that's what was going on. If you can get enough people to stand for something, believe in something, or whatever, it's almost like brainwashing, and you don't even realize it. It's really strange. It made me think of that, like...
The only other thing I wanted to bring up, kind of, was, and I thought this was really strange, it got to the credits, and I was just kind of looking at them, but it didn't say Sam Neill or Charlton Heston or anything like that. It kind of skipped all the big actors and main cast and went straight to, like, the little people, which I wonder if it was, like, another way of saying they weren't real.
That could be.
It was kind of interesting. I've never seen a movie do that before. Because even if they have the credits at the beginning that says, oh, this person's in it, that person's in it, at the end they have that too.
Sure.
So that was kind of weird.
Yeah, so anyway, but that's basically what I was going to say. It's just that that's the theme that, he was talking about how, Sutter Kane was telling him in the little confessional booth how, so many people have read my book and it's in this many languages and da-da-da-da, that basically... he could pretty much write whatever he wanted and people would, believe it. And in this case, they're taking a different route because it's like people are actually, it's making people lose their minds and become these monsters. But it's almost like a metaphor to me, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because it was almost, if that's what he was going for, I don't know if it was just accidental, it's almost a little ahead of its time in that sense, because we have people who stand for things now and they know nothing about what they're standing for. It's just, it's trendy, it's cool, it's popular, so I'm going to be a this or a that, or I am against this or I'm for this. And they're just followers. Their favorite celebrity, their favorite whoever says to believe this and hate that, that's what they do. And again, maybe that's not what he was going for when he did this, but that's what it kind of made me think. Maybe I'm grasping at straws, I don't know. But so yes.
Your score.
Anyway, final thoughts. As a movie, as a whole, it's like I said, it's very sloppy and has some cool ideas, but I think if they could have made them separate movies, independent movies of each other and did them better, maybe you might have something.
I don't feel like it was necessarily sloppy.
I did. I don't know. I just felt like the idea of, well, I don't want to get into that. I'm going to go with a D+.
I was bouncing between that and the C-.
Yeah.
It was nice to see John Carpenter do something that was a little further out of his wheelhouse a little bit.
Right, because if even The Thing is a lot more realistic and grounded than, it's still about an alien, of course, but this is so just all over the place.
It's a psychological terror.
Yeah, but it felt like much more of a realistic thing than this. This just felt very, like you said, so the idea like, oh, it's such insanity that nothing really has to make sense because, so like the idea is Sam Neill a real man?
Or was he a fictional character the entire time?
Right, because if he's a fictional character the whole time, it's like, I don't know, it just seems weird to me that, like, could he go to a high school that he thought he went to and find a yearbook with him in it? I don't know. It's just strange. So.
Well, how do you know that's not all in his head, or
yeah, exactly.
It's being written that way?
And then
I guess, never know.
Yeah, it's so ambiguous.
We all live in the eye of a blue-eyed giant.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'll go for D+.
Okay. Pretty close there.
Sure. Yeah.
What did you give Dear Woman? An F?
An F.
You silly man. Okay, so that's that. That's one of your two picks. Next time we'll be doing your other pick. Hopefully we get it out in time because I'm going on a trip next week. So
I think we will.
I think we will too. Yeah. So next week the podcast will be here.
Well, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Like us, share us, tell your friends, give us
Love
a rating
us.
and review.
Write a story about us.
Yeah.
Tell us we're not real.
Tell us how terrible we are.
We would love it.
Sure would. That's all for now.
For the Skate Podcast, I'm Josh.
I'm Brandon. We'll see you out there. What is she doing? What are you doing, Brittany?
Brittany, go to bed.